Dracula. They are in the Belmont hold.
I am Carmilla. I am come from far Styria to join the War Council.
Netflix's Castlevania series actually did it. It managed to bring the heat and excitement with skillful zeal that you don't expect from a video game adaptation. Dracula began as a tragic villain, riddled with loneliness and later overwhelming grief for the loss of his wife. Honestly, after him, I really didn't see how the show was gonna get better. For me, he was like best thing about it. A powerhouse and somebody who was more than just a villain, but felt totally misunderstood and just wanted to be left alone, just like all good villains. The fourth season takes place a couple of months after the battle at Castle Dracula. We see Alucard learning to survive and suffering from loneliness. We witness Trevor and Sypha experiencing exhaustion and burnout from the constant fighting and run-ins with night creatures. There's a bunch of people trying to get Dracula to come back from the dead. They're trying to keep it from happening, and I understand realistically they wouldn't be able to because they can't be everywhere at the same time, so somehow at some point somebody would figure out how to do it who's on the other side of the freaking country, but oh well. You know how these things go, it's an animation. We've got Isaac's development and him learning how to be free and to put his hands towards making things better rather than tearing things down or using them for destruction. We even get to see character growth of some of the night creatures, and I love how you witness some of the night creatures actually having personalities and not just being senseless creatures. I really had a great appreciation for the night creatures in the season. I mean, I did since the inception of the show, but especially since they were giving characters and not just cool designs. It made me happy. Isaac is badass. I gotta say, I actually felt very afraid for him when he went up against Camilla. I kept chanting over and over again in my head, please, for the love of God, Isaac, don't get too bold, don't get too cocky. And he's running right at her in a room filling with the blood of all the night creatures that she just slayed. And I really thought, I mean, they were playing it up like he was gonna die. The thing of it is, there are people on the show that don't feel like villains, but they are. Dracula, Isaac, Lenore, Hector. The main thing was to get rid of the entire human race. But this was after Dracula lost his wife to a bunch of overzealous religious freaks. And then we have Camilla, who had been the victim of horrible things at the hands of men, as she puts it. I can understand why she's bitter and has a vendetta against them, especially considering that her character is a vampire. I mean, she's villainous, but you can understand her motivations, and it's not like you can blame her for being a horrible human because she's no longer a human being.
So I'm going to take everything from everybody. I was in Dracula's castle. I went there to see what I could get out of it. Get some more power for myself, some more security for us. What I found was him and his people just fucking it up. And I saw right there that I could take the world away from him and have it for myself.
It's interesting to see the differences between the vampires and their personalities and motivations and wants. It makes them very real and personified, knowing that they don't all think exactly the same or want exactly the same things. The only thing that really connects them is that they need blood and they can't go out in the sun. So we look at Camilla and her larger-than-life personality and her need for vengeance, and there's an understanding there from us as the audience that she's not like the other vampires. She may have been a little bit too ambitious though. Despite all that, she didn't seem to be the focus. Hector and Lenore and the couple, Striga and Morana, were more center stage. It was quite interesting to know that the other vampire sisters had been stressed out and didn't feel like being as ambitious as their insatiable sister. At least Hector got his revenge, sort of, on Camilla and her sisters, but to be totally honest, I was half expecting him to redo of healer their asses. But it was good enough seeing the demonstration of his intellect despite the other vampires, including Lenore thinking that he was too simple. Even Camilla knew. She was like to Lenore, don't underestimate that human. You may think he's simple and stupid, but he's very crafty. I can tell. And she probably can tell because she herself is like that.
There's a deviousness in him.
Would you suspect a ragdoll of planning to steal your coin purse?
You mistake that puppy thing for being placid and stupid.
Even with some of the human characters that do the most stupid things, there is an explanation as to their motivations. Even still, I felt betrayed, surprised, and almost mad with rage when Alucard had gotten betrayed by those two humans that he let stay in his castle with him. I felt annoyed, distrustful, and justified when the humans tried to set fire to Striga and her girlfriend's camp, completely forgetting that those vampires were out there in the first place to try and harvest the humans. I'm like, yeah, go show those humans who's boss. I can't believe they had the nerve to try and pick a fight with them as a vampire. And then I have to catch myself because I'm like, oh yeah, by the way, those same vampire soldiers were actually there to eventually kill the humans, so... What was I talking about? I enjoyed the new characters that were introduced, like the girl who wanted to bring back the king and queen, and who was just in denial, although it's never explained what the thing was that tied itself to her shirt behind her neck. If it was, I never caught it. I like this season and I love this show to pieces. But I felt like something was missing. Be it brave or foolish of me to be the one person on the entire internet to have a bad thing to say about Castlevania the Netflix show, but despite how much I love something, I will pick it apart and I will be honest about what could be better about it or what I didn't like about it. Okay, here we go. Camilla's plans. I understand her motivations, and I like the fact that her sisters didn't share the same vision or ambition, but I would have liked to see Camilla, being that she was the villain of the story, the Circe to the freaking Nightwalkers. I was expecting her to have more of a reach into the world. I almost feel like the whole scheme with her and her sisters and them going out into the land and trying to fight the humans should have been front and center with their own story in its own season. There's a lot of talking about it and talking about what she was planning or what she did or her ambitions, but yet we barely get to see it. The only time we see anything of any semblance to what Camilla's plan was for her sisters to do is when the desperate humans picked a fight with the vampires that were staying in the camps on their land, Striga and her girlfriend. It was more about the romantic angle between Striga and Marana. You got this handsome vampire being a soldier and her girlfriend wanting them to just stop fighting, to settle down and listen to what they want, which, you know, I totally get. I feel like we missed an entire season of them going out and fighting and seeing humans fight back and actually putting up quite the fight to visually comprehend why the vampire sisters are tired, because everything is just kind of pushed under the rug, rushed, or ignored, and we're expected to just understand or imagine what happened and fill in the blanks, which is a total waste of the animation, to be honest, because that's what the animation is for, to portray things the way you can't really do in live action, or it takes a longer time to do in live action. So when Isaac finally goes to defeat Camilla, it doesn't feel earned. She wasn't the overwhelming presence that they tried to write her into being via the little bit of dialogue we get from her and her sisters and the lead up from the previous seasons. I mean, this season was cute, but it focused more on Trevor and Sypha being tired and constantly grinding. Season 4 of Castlevania felt like a grind. Like when you get into a certain level, probably like past level 15 of an MMO, and then it gets harder to level up, and so 10 hours out of your day is you literally fighting mobs that are just below your level so you can actually use your area of effect and not die every 5 seconds. It's not the most fun part of the game, and it's a really big part why I dropped off of MMOs for a while. Castlevania Season 4 honestly felt like a setup in the earlier portion, only to then later feel like we missed a considerable amount of content. Each season, or a few episodes, should have been dedicated to specific characters. It felt as though they had too many, and they couldn't follow all of them, and so they sacrificed elements of the other character stories to focus on Trevor and Sypha and their quest to stop people from bringing Dracula back to life. The next thing, Alucard. Oh my word. Like, I get that he killed his father and he's upset and he misses his mom, but if he is not the most boring and uninspiring character I have ever seen, holy shit. The whole time I'm waiting for there to be this build-up so we can see him really showcase his power, and it just never really comes. I heard this girl some months ago fangirling over him saying how he can level a city, and I'm like, are you sure you're not talking about his dad? Because he got his ass almost handed to him by a fucking acid-spewing human centipede spider. I kept wondering to myself, what the hell everybody was talking about that was a fan of him? I mean, I initially was, and then it kind of like, he just dropped off the face of the fucking earth. Keep in mind, I did not play the video games, even though I've known about them for a long, long time, but I was expecting a little bit more from Dracula's son. And let's mention, when they were going up against the Horde at the end, I saw Alucard do some maneuvers that made me wonder when he learned them. And if he could have always done that, why didn't he do it from the start when he was fighting those other things? As much as I was enjoying this season, I think I enjoyed the last one a bit better because things felt more organized. This season, Season 4, just felt as though things were all over the place and the writers were just doing fan service so that the characters got some screen time. It's like they wanted to write a story about Trevor and Sypha, but then they were like, oh yeah, but we have to showcase this character and these characters because they haven't been on screen for a while. Okay, just show them doing some random thing and then cut back. Oh yeah, we forgot about these characters over here. Let's have them do this. There's almost no rhyme and reason to the arrangement of the stories around the central arc, which I think is Trevor and Sypha not only trying to stop Dracula from coming back, but from stopping this deity called Death, who was really interesting and becomes the boss at the end. But that part just flies by in an instant when Trevor defeats him. Even though we don't really see him doing anything of any danger, we don't get to see why Death is so dangerous and why Trevor has to kill him. We just hear him talking about how dangerous he is, which is what his alternate character did the entire time. Maybe I'm missing something. But when Death was in his full form, all I saw was a vortex of rubble spinning in a circle around them in that local area. And then quickly like that, it was over. Meanwhile, in the distance, not very far away, Alucard and Sypha are scratching their asses while Trevor, the most human person there, the most vulnerable person, goes to kill this thing. And I'm like, what the hell? I really wanted to see Alucard do some shit, but he's like a supporting character, and maybe that's how it was in the video game, but that's not what it felt like when they were building up the characters in Season 1, Season 2, and Season 3. Also, didn't Hector have that ring on his finger for the sole purpose of making sure that he was loyal to the vampires? When Lenore tricked him, he couldn't betray them? Doesn't conspiring for Isaac to make a portal in their castle to defeat Camilla disloyal? And if he could have cut his finger off from the beginning to get the ring off, why didn't he do it? Okay, I guess he needed somebody else to do it, but it's not like it mattered because he did a very disloyal thing conspiring against the vampires in the first place. So that part made no sense, even though it was great to see him get one over on them. The ending does feel like the show is over, but I walked away feeling just strange because I really like the show and I love the characters, but I was feeling as though the show was somehow disjointed. It feels almost like they got different writers for Season 4, and the main managers or overseers of the show wanted all the writers to have an equal piece of the pie, even if it didn't make sense for everyone to have an equal piece. I mean, as my partner suggested, maybe Netflix told the showrunners that was it, and they were forced to wrap up what was supposed to be an 8-season story into one season. Netflix tracks everything, and they were probably expecting over time that Castlevania would get Army of the Dead numbers, and maybe because it wasn't doing how they expected it to do, they were like, nah, we're not gonna renew it again, just wrap it up. And the writers are like, what the how are we supposed to wrap up like 5 other seasons into one season? And that's why it feels so rushed. My partner also suggested that maybe if it was live action, the numbers would have been higher. And the reason he claimed that is because it seems as though most grown-ups, if they see something is animated, they automatically assume it's for kids. Even my father, I will tell him, Rick and Morty is right up his alley of comedy. Invincible is really freaking dark. Even though my dad doesn't really like dark things, but he will just make fun of me or be like, no man, it's animated, it's a cartoon. He does not like cartoons. It's not his shtick. He can't consume media that way. So that is a theory. Overall, I do like the show, and I'm so glad that Netflix picked this up because it does show that you can make good video game movies or TV show adaptations. There were a lot of things that they did right about the show and things they can improve upon, but overall, it will still be in the forefront of my mind for a while as one of the greatest animation shows I've seen on Netflix based on a video game. Thanks so much for watching. This has been Ultiori. You ask, we answer.